Hi, my name is Catherine or Kat. I'm seeking any help, any direction. If there's any attorneys that can practice in California and no family law, please hit me up. If you're so inclined to donate so I can hire an attorney, I don't ask for that, but I'm desperate. He always threatened that if I left, that he and his dad would hire an attorney and slaughter me to get the kid, and now it's happened, and it just is horribly unfair. And these two people consistently lie, and I have nothing going except the truth. So I'm going to tell our story, and not just the recent story that involves the Harry Peeny rhymer, but I'm going to go back in time and tell the story from the beginning because why not at this point? There were a lot of questions about how I could stay with someone like this, and I'm hoping that by starting from the beginning and kind of explaining my thoughts and actions will help, people understand that. And maybe someone's in the same boat as me, or a similar boat, and by hearing my story, they won't make my mistake. I can hope, I don't know. Okay, so I met my partner 16 years ago. Um, we met through my mom and his best friend who worked together at a high-end jewelry store where his friend was security and my mom worked in sales. I was going through a rough breakup with my ex, who was 20 years my senior and much wealthier than I. And while we had a good relationship, when I broke up with him, he went a little nuts and didn't want the breakup to happen. And my mom actually guided me to these two boys, for help, to have like men in my life who could, scare him off, sort of thing. Um, and I met Phony Pickle, who he and his friend implied that he owned this nightclub, but really he was just a bouncer at it. Um, and had this like whirlwind romance where he immediately, we were seeing each other every day. Um, right off the bat, there were warning signs though. Like, we had a fight. I had never had a fight like this before where I had a early morning meeting and it was important, like with a new client, um, and he said he'd get me a coffee to help me out. And so I finished getting ready, and I'm like, well, where's the coffee? And he goes, oh, I didn't get it. And I was kind of exasperated, and I said, please don't tell me you're going to do something and not do it, because now I didn't budget time to get coffee into my schedule. So now I have to go, to this meeting all uncaffeinated, and he immediately was like, upset and pouting, and I couldn't understand. I was like, what is going on? Why are you acting so butthurt? And he's like, well, you know, I'm my feelings are hurt. And I was like, what? Why? And he's like, because you're mad at me. And I'm like, okay, sorry. And he's like, and then it turned it into a fight, like where he wanted me to apologize for hurting his feelings. And I was like, that's not how this works. Like, I have feelings too. Like, you hurt my feelings first, or you did something that upset me, and I'm allowed to be upset. Like, and I wasn't like cussing at him or calling him names. I was just exasperated for a minute and just like, ugh, don't say you're gonna do something if you're not gonna do it. That was like warning sign number one. And then I went to work, came back, basically was like, I don't think we're gonna be a good match, and he would not let me break up with him. He made me feel bad. He love bombed me. He guilted me. Like, my crazy, I don't want to call him my crazy ex because he wasn't crazy until the breakup, but he had run over Phony's motorcycle with his like $150,000 car with witnesses, like totally crazy. And Phony made me feel bad about his motorcycle, being run over, even though it wasn't damaged. Like, now all of a sudden he's like, oh, it has that scratch and it happened because of you. And, ugh. Um, so and he had already like met my mom and, worked on her. And so even my mom was like, oh, don't be so picky, give him a chance. And I did. Uh, and, and then he proposed really fast, which in itself was manipulative. He knew I had broken up with the love of my life because I was a brat in my early 20s, and I had actually split up with him because he didn't propose fast enough for me. And so he like hears the story and, does the opposite and proposes really fast, which I always said, I'm not a fan of either. But he also did a public proposal, which I've always said is horrible and to never put me in that situation because the woman doesn't have a chance to say no. And unless you're like 100% sure that's what she wants, don't do it. And my first time meeting his parents, and then this huge group of his parents' friends at this local bar that ended up being a fixture in our lives. Ugh, God, I wish someone had whispered into my ear, and I never would have even taken that first trip. Anyways, he proposed in front of this huge room full of people, and they're all chanting, "Say yes, say yes." And I did, and he didn't have a ring or anything, and he never even, his mom gave him a little chipped diamond to make a ring out of, which he never did. Like, so he proposed without a ring, and then I was pressured into saying yes in front of all these people. And then I cried for like 3 days straight, and he's all, "Oh, tears of joy," and it was like, no, tears of panic and pressure and fear, and oh God, I'm such an idiot. And I moved in with him really fast to save money, um, and then we went through a lawsuit together that I ended up single fight. Well, first I hired lawyers, and then when that got too expensive, I ended up fighting it like it was my job basically, and um, would have walked away with a huge win if Phoney had just held it together during a deposition. But when he like all he had to do was show up and say and tell the truth. They were questioning him, and all he had to do was answer truthfully, and he couldn't even answer like the most basic questions. Like they would say like, "How often do you see your neighbor?" And the answer is like, every other day or so. Instead of saying that, he'd be like, I don't know, last year. And then, like, okay. And, what's your birthday? And he'd be like, March.